To the Hill national politics reporter Julia Manchester. Julia, great to see you. I mean, how serious an inquiry is this, and should it be? Should we just let bygones be bygones, or is there a real national interest in knowing what went on in the Biden White House?
Great to see you, Jonathan. Look, I think there's a huge national interest right now. I mean, you have a number of tell-all books from the last months of the Biden administration that have come out in recent weeks, and there's been a lot of intrigue, and it's renewed a lot of intrigue. On top of that, you have President Biden, prior to his cancer diagnosis, coming out and making his first step back into the limelight since he left the White House earlier this year, appearing on the BBC and then The View. And then on top of that, of course, you have that prostate cancer diagnosis, which is very serious. So I think all of those coupled together really create this perfect storm for intrigue in President Biden. We know that the House Oversight Committee, Republicans on that committee, Republicans in Congress have said, continuously that they will investigate this. So I think this investigation, with the public interest, with the coverage, with Biden's comments, et cetera, it will only pick up from here.
So I don't think there's any doubt in most people's minds, Julia, that there was a cover-up in the White House. But did that cover-up harm the nation, or did it just very clearly harm the Democrats?
Well, that's a question I think you're going to, hear Republicans in particular answering. I mean, clearly it harmed the Democrats. This was not their best case scenario in the 2024 presidential elections, giving the vice president only, 106 days to run a campaign. But the question is, I think there's a lot of Republicans, many Americans asking, who was in charge? I mean, we would think that the president was in charge, but if there are these serious questions about what his, health state was in the final days of his administration, final months, I think there are going to be questions, about what went on in that decision-making process and who was involved in that process.
Yeah. Did President Trump seem to choose his words, to me at least, pretty carefully when he was asked about the prospect of Dr. Jill Biden, President Biden's wife, being called to testify? President Trump was careful on Friday, I thought. What do you think? Should she be called to testify? I mean, she was the power behind the throne, I think, here.
I think that's something Republicans would obviously like to do here, but I think you're going to see congressional Republicans taking a cue from President Trump and following his lead on that. This is a very sensitive situation any way you cut it, regardless of, the questions involved in this. Of course, we know that understand that that President Biden has cancer right now, that his family is dealing with that. So I think there's also a public element to this, how good would it look to call on the former First Lady at this time to testify about this? We know that the former First Lady has stood staunchly by President Biden's side and has maintained that a lot of these books that have come out questioning his health in the final days of his administration were not written, she says, by people who directly covered Biden. So she stood firm publicly now, but we'll see if she's before the panel.
Yeah, and of course, we all absolutely wish President Biden the very best and his family in his ongoing battle against cancer. I want to switch gears quickly. Elon Musk headed for the exits this week, marking the end of his time leading Doge, but not before splitting with Trump's big, beautiful bill. It was interesting in that joint appearance on Friday, Julia, that they were asked a question about Musk's criticism. President Trump said, I'll take that first, then talked for about 2 minutes and then moved to the next question without giving Elon an actual chance. There is a bit of a split there, but they still seem pretty good buddies from what we saw on Friday.
There is a bit of a split there, and you also have to remember this is a sensitive time for Republicans in the House and the Senate as they work on this legislation, particularly in the Senate. We do know that Elon Musk's comments about not liking this big, beautiful bill did ruffle some feathers among House Republicans. Obviously, President Trump wants them on his team, so he has to approach this very carefully. But there are other Republicans who are agreeing with Elon Musk here. I mean, you have Governor Ron DeSantis in Florida Florida, agreeing with Elon Musk, saying that a lot of these DOGE cuts should be codified in this legislation. So we'll see, how that moves ahead. But Jonathan, I think it's so interesting to see Elon Musk continuing to, voice his opinion on these matters. I think President Trump hinted at this yesterday, but even though Elon Musk may be leaving in an official capacity, I think he will very much still have one foot in Trump world and still be wielding, at least some kind of influence.
Yeah, for sure. Julia, it is always so good to see you. Thank you for spending part of your Saturday morning with us, Julia Manchester. Thanks so much, Julia.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.